Hello guys. So in this session, we are going to learn how to deploy NodeApp to AWS EKS using Jenkins Pipeline. Right. So here you can see in this session, we are going to learn how to deploy NodeApp to AWS EKS using Jenkins Pipeline. Okay. So for this, first of all, we need two prerequisites here. First of all, we need a install Jenkins. So as you can see, this is my Jenkins dashboard, right? That means I have successfully installed Jenkins. And the second one is we need a EKS cluster, AWS EKS cluster. Okay. So as you can see here, I have already created AWS EKS cluster, right? This is my master node, right? This is my master here, and this is my node. That means I have successfully create my EKS cluster, AWS EKS cluster. If you don't know how to create, then you can go to this site. So this is my article. So you can follow this article to create EKS cluster using EKS CTL. And then you can install Jenkins, right? So as you can see here, I have already created Jenkins, right? Sorry, I have already installed Jenkins. So you can see, welcome to Jenkins, right? So this is my Jenkins dashboard. So let's start to deploy NodeApp to AWS EKS using Jenkins pipeline. So here we are going to use Jenkins pipeline to deploy NodeApp. So first of all, so the first step is we need to install some plugins. Which plugins? So first of all, go to the manage Jenkins and go to the plugins and go to the available plugins and search for Node.js, because here we are going to deploy Node app, right? So that's why we need a Node.js. So here Node.js plugin executed Node.js script as a build script. So let's install first. Okay, so as you can see, success. So it's pending, so wait for a few seconds. Okay, success. Okay, it's done. Now go to the manage Jenkins. Okay, so you go to the dashboard. So we have successfully installed Node.js plugin, right? Okay. Now the next step is here. Go to the Jenkins, and the next step is here. We need to install Node.js. So go to the tools. Okay, and let's scroll down. And as you can see, Node.js installations, right? So click on add Node.js and here enter name. So I'm going to enter name node. Okay, and then install automatically, and the latest version is 20.8.0, right? Okay, now you keep as it is and click on save. Okay, if I go to my tools, let's check. You can see you have successfully installed, right? Installation of Node.js. Okay, now it's done. Now go to the dashboard. Okay, now it's done, right? Okay, after that we need to add credentials here. Okay, which credentials? So first of all, we need to create repository on our GitHub. Okay, so as you can see, this is my GitHub repository. Okay, with the name Deploy NodeApp to AWS EKS using Jenkins Pipeline. So this is my repository. So here I'm going to use this repository. So first of all, as you can see here, the files, Docker file, then Jenkins file, then Node.js app.yaml file, then package.json file, and then after that node.js file, right? You can see this is my files. Okay, so now this is my repository, GitHub repository. Okay, so I'm going to use this repository. So that's why here we need to add credentials. Which credentials? GitHub credentials. So let's go to the dashboard, then go to the managing case, and here we need to add credentials, our GitHub credentials. So go to the credentials, and click on global. Then click on add credentials. And here username and password. Then username. So I'm going to enter my username of GitHub. So my username is DevOps Hint, and then enter password. Okay. And I'm going to enter ID, GitHub credentials. Okay. So my ID name is GitHub credentials, and click on create. Okay, we have successfully created our GitHub credentials here. Okay, it's done. Now go to the dashboard. Okay, so now here let's create our pipeline, right? So before creating pipeline here, let's go to the Jenkins file here. And as you can see here, first of all, tools Node.js, right? Okay, so here you can see stage is Docker, right? Build Node.js Docker image, right? So we need a Docker. We have successfully installed Node.js, right? Right. So we have successfully installed Node. After that, we need to install Docker. Where in Jenkins? In Jenkins, we need to install Docker here. So let's install Docker here. So how to install? So first of all, let's clear the screen first. And if I search Docker, we can see there is an error. Docker not found. So we need to install Docker. So there is a command docker apt install docker.io. So I'm going to install Docker. So yes, I want to install. Okay, so it's successfully installed Docker. So let's clear the screen first. Okay, now after installing Docker, we need to give some permissions to Docker, right? So which permissions? So here is the permission. So first of all, we need to add current user to Docker group. So there is a command, and the next command is here, change the permission of Docker socket to be able to connect the Docker daemon, right? So let's run this command. Okay, it's done. We have successfully installed Docker and we have successfully given some permissions to our Docker. Okay, it's done. Now, the next step is let's create pipeline, right? So the next step is we need to create pipeline. So click on new item and go to the pipeline. Sorry, enter your pipeline name. So my pipeline will be AWS EKS. Click on pipeline and click on OK. Okay. After that, here select GitHub project, right? And here we need to enter the URL of our GitHub project. So here is the URL here. So let's copy the URL of our project. And let's enter here. Okay. Now let's go scroll down. So pipeline script, right? So here we need to create our pipeline syntax, right? So click on pipeline syntax and here select with credentials, right? With credentials. And after that here, okay, with credentials, right? So here we need to add our credentials. Which credentials? So first of all, let's check the pipeline. So here is my pipeline. Okay. So as you can see, first of all, in pipeline agent any, then tools Node.js. In stage, you can see first of all, I'm going to clone my repository. Which repository? My GitHub repository. So first of all, you can see this is my repository. So I'm going to clone my GitHub repository. So you can see checkout, branches, name, then extensions, and user remote config credentials. In credentials, GitHub credential, right? That we have successfully added credentials, right? And my id name is credential. In this id I have successfully added my GitHub credentials, right? Then the url is here. Which url? My GitHub repository url. This is my GitHub repository url. As you can see, this is my GitHub repository url. Okay. Then after that, now this is my GitHub repository url, right? Okay, this is my GitHub repository URL. Okay, now the next is stage Node.js build. So I'm going to build my Node.js, right? That means I'm going to install npm. Okay, then after that, the next stage is build Node.js Docker image, right? So that's why here we are going to install. We have successfully installed Docker, and the step is, you can see in script sh docker build -t DevOps hint node app 1.0, right? That means here we are going to build our image, right? Which image? This node app 1.0. Okay, then after that, the next stage is deploy Docker image to Docker Hub. So we are going to deploy our Docker image to Docker Hub, right? So that's why here we need to generate syntax with credentials. Why? Because here when we deploy our Docker image, here we are going to use this script with credentials. In credentials, our DevOps hint Docker. That means here we are going to create secret, right? Which secret? So first of all, select with credentials and here add secret text, right? So select secret text. So here in credentials, click on add Jenkins, select secret text, and the secret is our Docker Hub password. So I'm going to enter my Docker Hub password in secret. And in ID, I'm going to enter DevOps hint. As you can see here, DevOps hint Docker, right? DevOps hint Docker. And in variable also there is a DevOps hint Docker, right? So let's enter. Okay, DevOps hint Docker. So now click on add. In variable, enter DevOps in Docker, right? Okay. Now click on generate pipeline script. So as you can see, our pipeline look like this: with credential, then string credentials, DevOps in Docker, variable, DevOps in Docker, right? So our syntax is like that, right? So that's why here you can see my syntax same, right? With credential, then string credential id DevOps in Docker, then variable name, then sh docker login -u DevOps in -p, then DevOps in Docker, right? This is my credentials, right? Secret file, right? This is my secret. Which secret? Our Docker Hub password, right? Why? Because here we are going to deploy Docker image to Docker Hub. So that's why here we need a Docker Hub password. So, right. So that's why here I'm going to mention Docker Hub password, right? Then next is sh docker push DevOps in and our image name. That means we have in this step we have successfully push our image to Docker Hub. Okay. So as you can see, first of all, we are going to clone our repository. Then we are going to install npm. Then we are going to build our Docker image. And after that, we are going to deploy our Docker image to Docker Hub. Right? Okay. Now the next and last stage is deploying NodeApp to Kubernetes. So here we are going to we are going to learn this deploying NodeApp to Kubernetes. So first of all, in step, you can see in first step here, first of all, AWS EKS update kubeconfig hyphen name and name. So this is my cluster name. So my cluster name is sample. So as you can see, if I go to my cluster, so here you can see my cluster. You can see my cluster name is sample, right? The status is active and the version is 1.27 provider EKS, right? My cluster name is sample. So that's why here my cluster name is sample and then hyphen region. So my region name is AP South 1. Then next step is sh kubectl get ns, right? Here we are going to print this get ns means nodes, right? The information about ns, right? Okay, then next step is shqctl apply hyphen f nodeapp.yaml file, right? So here we are going to deploy this Nodejs to Kubernetes. That means Nodejs app.yml. So where is the file Nodejs app.yml? So this file is in our GitHub project. So you can see Nodejs app.yml, right? As you can see our file name. So in our file name, our image name, you can see our image name DevOps hint, then image name Node.js app 1.0, right? Type is load balancer. So this is our file. So that means here we are going to deploy this file, right? Node app file to Kubernetes, right? So okay. So that's my pipeline. So let's copy the pipeline. And in this pipeline, you need to change, first of all, your here in repository, your repository URL, right? Then next change is here your Docker, your Docker hub username, right? Next change is here. Then here, next change is here your Docker hub secret file name ID, right? Secret file ID, then variable name, right? And okay, and your next change is your cluster name, then your region name, right? And your Node.js app.yaml file name. Okay, so that's my pipeline. So I'm going to copy this pipeline and let's paste here. Okay. So here in this pipeline, first of all, we are going to clone this repository. Then next stage is we are going to install npm. Then next stage is we are going to build Docker image. And then we are going, the next stage is we are going to deploy our Docker image to Docker Hub, right? Then last stage is we are going to deploy Node app to Kubernetes, right? Okay. So let's check for once. Okay, it's correct. So click on save. And now click on build now. So as you can see, first of all, declarative tool install. So it's done. You can see now the next stage we are going to clone code from GitHub. So it's also done. Then we are going to install Node.js build, right? Then we are going to successfully build Node.js Docker image. So it's running. Yeah, it's done. Now the next step is deploy Docker image to Docker Hub. It's failed. Why? Let's check the logs. So in logs, so go to the job and then console output. So in console output, let's check the error. So the error is here AWS EKS update kubectl unable to locate credentials. You can configure credentials by running AWS configure. When we create EKS, when we create AWS EKS, right? That means EKS cluster. When we create AWS EKS cluster, then we provide our AWS configure. But when we install Jenkins, then we need to configure our AWS in Jenkins, right? So that's why they give us error. So go to the Jenkins. So I'm going to switch to my Jenkins using sudo su Jenkins. Okay, and here we need to configure our AWS, right? So let's run AWS configure command, and then here enter AWS access key ID and secret access key ID, then AWS region. So I'm going to enter my access key ID, then secret access key ID, then region AP South -1. Okay. Now if I run AWS configure, you can see, okay, it's done. Now it's done. We have successfully configured our AWS. Now let's build. Now it's deploying Docker image to Docker Hub. You can see. Okay, it's done. It's success. Now it's in progress. Deploying. Okay, it's also success. You can see deploying Nodejs, NodeApp to Kubernetes is also success, right? You can see our job is success. So let's go to the console output and let's check the output. So you can see first of all here. So here you can see here we have successfully cloned our repository, right? You can see we have successfully cloned our repository. Then we have successfully installed npm, right? Then you can see we have successfully built our Docker image, right? Okay, you can see the Docker image built. And then we have successfully push this Docker image to Docker Hub. You can see Docker push DevOps hint, right? Okay. And then in last, here we have successfully deploy this Node.js app to Kubernetes, right? You can see AWS EKS update kubeconfig, the name, and when we print this kubectl get NS, you can see the name is default and the status is active, and the age is then kube node lays, then kube public, then kube system. Then here when we print this, when we run this script, kubectl apply -f node.js app.yaml, then you can see the output deployment apps node.js app created and service node app also created, right? That means here we are successfully deploy node app to EKS, AWS EKS using Jenkins pipeline, right? Right, you can see it's succeed and then you can see it's success. Okay, that means we have successfully deployed node app to Kubernetes. So let's check. So go to the command prompt here, go to the here, sorry, go to our Jenkins, and here if I run kubectl git pods, so you can see our name is Node.js app and the ready one of one status running, restart, and the age is 3 minutes ago, right? Okay. Then after that here, if I run kubectl get svc, so you can see the node app.js, the type is load balancer, the cluster IP, external IP ports, right? And the age, right? So I'm going to copy this external IP and hit on browser. So let's check our image, right? Which image? Node.js image. So let's hit on browser and let's check our image. It will print hello world. You can see our image is hello world. Why? Because in my repository, GitHub repository, in my server.js, there is a code to print hello world, right? You can see hello world. So that's why we are going to use this image, right? So that's why here hello world, right? So that means here we are successfully deploy Node.js, sorry, we have successfully deployed NodeApp to AWS EKS using Jenkins Pipeline, right? So in this session, we have learned how to deploy NodeApp to AWS EKS using Jenkins Pipeline. So thank you for watching.